The most sophisticated banks in the whole world have the best saving accounts and vaults filled with treasures. These banks also receive daily deposits, biological samples. The wealth stored in there is being made available to scientists tackling diseases. We are, of course, talking about biobanks here. Biobanks that provide a better genetic understanding of entire populations, help improve the prevention, diagnosis, and treatment of a wide range of disease, and could even give us answers to crucial questions about the actual pandemic. Developing policies that govern data access for research by scientists worldwide is one of the most challenging issues related to these biobanks. Naomi Allen, Chief Scientist for UK Biobank, is taking up this challenge brilliantly while developing scientific strategies for the introduction of new enhancements into the resource. Please welcome her.
Hello, everybody. I'd like to talk to you today about the role that UK Biobank is playing in helping to enable open science and research innovation. So UK Biobank is a study that's following the health of 500,000 people in the UK to better understand how lifestyle and genetic factors interact with each other to cause disease in some people, but not in others. It is arguably the most accessible, the most in-depth, largest, easy to use and adaptable biomedical data resource that exists currently in the world. And our sole aim is to enable scientific discoveries in relation to public health that will improve human health today and tomorrow. We're largely funded by the Wellcome Trust and the MRC in the UK, with also support from other government bodies and charities. So UK Biobank is a study that has collected a large amount of data on 500,000 participants in the UK aged 40 to 69 years at recruitment between 2006 and 2010. And the map on the left shows you the different 22 assessment centres where people were invited to join the study from about a 25-mile radius around each centre. Participants came along to an assessment centre. They had lots of questions about their lifestyle, medical history, loads of physical measures performed, and so on. So the data is highly standardised and curated. We've also collected biological samples such as blood, urine, and saliva, and we have linkage to follow up their health records over time through linkage to their electronic health records, and we now have such linkage for over 10 years of follow-up for all participants. And what makes this data set really unique is that it is readily accessible to researchers worldwide to do public health research. Since recruitment finished in 2010, we've also been collecting additional data on all of our participants. So, for example, we've collected repeat assessment data on subsets. We routinely send out web-based questionnaires to those with email to collect information about health outcomes that are not easily ascertained through linkage to medical records, such as pain and cognitive function. We've collected physical activity monitor data on 100,000 participants. We've done a whole series of baseline biochemistry measures on the serum and urine samples we've collected on all 500,000 participants. And we have genomic data on all 500,000, which I'll talk a bit in more detail later. And we're halfway through a multimodal imaging project in 100,000 participants as well. So when we first started setting up UK Biobank over 10 years ago, one of the main aims was to look at gene-environment interactions. So obtaining genomic data on all of our participants was an important goal for us. This will help researchers to determine the extent to which genetic factors influence future disease risk in the general population, to help us better understand the causes of disease and the mechanisms through which genetic factors influence disease risk, and also paves the way for precision medicine or targeted therapy to those who are at genetic risk of certain diseases. And UK Biobank is to date the largest study in the world with such extensive genomic data combined with lifestyle and medical risk factors, and also linkage to future health outcomes. And I think it's true to say that the resource has really been transformative in terms of accelerating the use of genetics in public health research and enabling scientific discoveries. So this is an example of just how the genetic data in the resource has been used to generate scientific research. So this is an example of researchers generating polygenic risk scores. So this is work that I'm showing here that's been done by the Broad Institute in the US, where they developed a genetic risk score based on all of the genome-wide variants in all of the individuals for coronary heart disease. And you can see in the graph in the middle that those in the lucky enough to be in the top 5th percentile of genetic risk for developing heart disease had over 3 times the risk of developing that condition compared to the rest of the population. And so this means actually that genetic risk for coronary heart disease is as great as that of many monogenic disorders, and that the genetic risk is independent of known risk factors such as smoking and body weight and physical activity. And which means that you can imagine a situation where if clinicians knew your genetic risk of developing heart disease, you could then target primary prevention measures or screening programs to those who are at particular high genetic risk. So this has really been an exciting use of the genetic data in order to make scientific discoveries in relation to population health. This has led to other consortiums coming together to perform much more detailed genomic sequencing on the 500,000 cohort. So for example, a pharmaceutical consortium led by Regeneron has invested in UK Biobank to undertake whole exome sequencing in all 500,000. So this measures the coding regions of the genome, which is about 2% of all the genome that codes for the proteins, as in really important for drug discovery work. Data for the first 50,000 participants was made available last year. Data for 200,000 was made available a few weeks ago, with the remaining data for the rest of the cohort available next year. In addition to that, other consortium funded by the government, charity and industry have come together to measure the whole genome sequencing. So this is genetic variation across the entire genome. This is currently underway. The sequencing is being performed by the Sanger Institute in the UK and Decode in Iceland, with data for the first 200,000 participants being available next year and the rest of the cohort available in a couple of years' time. So there are other large-scale initiatives underway to assay samples across the cohort. Colleagues at the University of Leicester in the UK are measuring telomere length in all 500,000 participants to conduct research into biological aging, and these data will be available in the first quarter of next year. In addition, Nightingale Health, a biomedical company from Finland, are undertaking NMR metabolomics in all 500,000 participants, this measuring about 200 mainly circulating lipids in the blood samples of all the cohort. Again, the data available for the first tranche of 120,000 people will be available in the first half of next year. What this means is that over the last 18 months or so, industry has effectively become a funder of UK Biobank. And this investment is in the order of millions of dollars, and such large scale investment is simply not feasible from most public sector sources. And it does highlight the effectiveness of our data sharing model, where the data is easily accessible for both academic and commercial researchers. It does mean that we have made available the data an exclusive period of access to researchers who are assaying samples of about 9 to 12 months, so that researchers can do their analyses and publications before we make those data more widely available to the research community. Of course, this method massively accelerates the rate at which the biological samples are converted into data. It's building expertise at the cutting edge of life sciences, and it is potentially transformative in the terms of research that it can support. It will certainly catalyze novel scientific discoveries in the space of genomics and metabolomics, and accelerate the development of new therapies, particularly drug discovery work, with ultimately, of course, with the aim to improve public and patient outcomes. I just want to change tack a little bit and talk now about UK Biobank's role in relation to COVID-19 research. So back in March of this year, when the pandemic really hit the UK, our government asked us to set up a study to determine the extent of past infection with coronavirus in 20,000 individuals across the UK every month for 6 months. And this is in order to see how the infection changes by age, sex, region, ethnicity, and so on. And because we're collecting samples in the same individuals repeatedly over time, we can look at how antibody levels are changing in order to address questions about waning immunity and likely reinfection. The study involves mailing a kit, which you can see on the left here, to people's homes. They take a finger prick of blood, pop it into the tube, send it in the mail back to the lab. We then aliquot it out and take it to a lab in Oxford in the UK to measure antibodies to the main protein of the coronavirus. So far, between the end of May and mid-September, for which data is available, just over 8% of our study population do have antibodies to the coronavirus. So we're helping with the surveillance efforts of the UK government in that regard. In other ways, we're also helping to generate unique COVID-related data. And this particular study is related to our imaging project that's currently underway. So here we're aiming to enable research to look into the effect of the coronavirus on changes in multimodal imaging measures across different organ systems. We plan to send self-administered antibody-based test kits to all 50,000 participants who previously attended an imaging assessment, so before the COVID-19 pandemic. And then we will see who has antibodies and who doesn't, and we will re-invite back to have a second imaging assessment, 1,500 participants who are seropositive and 1,500 who are seronegative as controls over the next 6 months or so. And this will generate the only study in the world with imaging data both pre and post COVID-19 infection using standardized measures. So it will help researchers to better understand the direct effect of coronavirus infection on multiple organ systems. Next slide. In addition, we're also helping to make available regular updates of electronic health data to enable COVID-19 research. So, for example, we have diagnostic antigen test data, we have data from death records, hospital inpatient admissions, including critical care and primary care records, up until from the mid-July to end of September, which covers the entire first wave of the pandemic in the UK. And already there are several thousands of cases in the cohort. Next. It's worth saying that the primary care data is made available to us through the Secretary of State directly from the government and is only available for COVID-19 research purposes. Next. And what this is doing is enabling researchers from around the world to conduct research into the association of lifestyle, underlying health conditions, medication and genetic factors on COVID-19 across the full disease spectrum, particularly with the ramping up of mass testing that's happened in this country over the last couple of months. Next slide. And already over 670 research groups have accessed these data to perform COVID-19 research, and already over 600 papers have been published, with more coming out every day. And you can see here some of the examples, looking at ethnic group in relation to hospitalization for COVID-19, disparities in socioeconomic situation, vitamin D, and a whole range of genetic factors on the risk of severe COVID-19. Next. So what's important about UK Biobank is our data sharing model. So the data is available to all bona fide researchers for all types of health-related research that's in the public interest. There's no preferential or exclusive access, so it's a level playing field for both academic and commercial researchers. The researchers only have to pay for cost recovery of using the data. We do ask researchers to make their findings public and then return the results back to us, so we can then share the results back to the wider research community. And this model enables academic and industry researchers to engage and collaborate together to benefit the wider research community. Next. So it now really truly is an international resource. When we opened up for business in 2012, it was mainly researchers from the UK, and we just had over 300 researchers who signed up in that year. Last year alone, we had nearly 6,000 registers sign up to use the resource, and the large majority, just under 80%, were from overseas. Overall, we now have over 17,000 registered researchers in over 70 countries. So it really is an international resource now. Next slide, please. So when we talk about the future of UK Biobank, what's clear is just the sheer amount of data we have is becoming a bit of a problem. At the moment, researchers download our data and do their analyses on their own computers. Over the next couple of years, the data set will grow to 15 petabytes, which is the equivalent of about 4.5 times the entire Netflix catalogue. And even with the most fastest internet connection in the world, this would take 3 months to download. So it's just simply not a feasible strategy for us in the future. So we're working with DNA Nexus, a biomedical informatics platform, and AWS to generate a research analysis platform so that researchers can do their analysis in situ and generate their results, and so they don't have to have the local compute power. Next, please. We're hoping that this will hugely democratize access because there's no need to have large storage capacity at your own institution. And it also means that the data set can be used much more flexibly. It has all the data analysis and visualization and bioinformatic tools already in the platform. It's much more scalable. And of course, the data is also more secure. Next, please. I just want to leave you with this final slide, which is a heat map of the world showing the types of data and research that researchers are using UK Biobank. Obviously, genetics is kind of at its heart, but it's certainly being used for a really broad range of research purposes that's in the public health interest. So thank you very much for listening, and I'm happy to talk to people directly via email later. Thank you.